The rain-slicked streets of Elmwood, Ohio, blurred into a watercolor haze as my hands trembled on the wheel. The old Chevy's engine humming like a heartbeat too fast to ignore. Marcus's voice, low and steady from the passenger seat, cut through the storm outside and the one raging inside me. Ease up. Christian breathed with the turn. But then his fingers brushed mine on the gear shift. Warm and deliberate. And the world tilted. Tires screeching as I veered toward the curb. My breath catching in a gasp that tasted like secrets I'd never dared whisper. In that split second, everything I thought I knew about control shattered, leaving me adrift in a current pulling me toward him. Toward truths I'd buried deeper than the roots of those rain-drenched oaks lining our forgotten town. I was 18, fresh out of high school in the kind of Midwest suburb where everyone knew your business but pretended not to, where Friday nights meant football fields and church potlucks, and dreams like mine got stuffed into lockers and slammed shut. Driving lessons were supposed to be my ticket to freedom. Mom's idea. Really. After Dad's old truck sat rusting in the driveway, since his shift at the factory stretched longer each year. You need to get out there, Chris, she'd said over breakfast that morning, her eyes tired from double shifts at the diner, forcing a smile that didn't reach the lines etched around her mouth. The world's bigger than this street. If only she knew how right she was, and how terrifying that felt. Marcus Washington pulled up in that battered red sedan 15 minutes early for our first lesson, his smile flashing white against the overcast sky as he unfolded from the driver's seat. He was everything Elmwood wasn't, broad-shouldered and unapologetically present. With skin like polished mahogany and eyes that held stories from places I'd only seen on late-night TV Chicago. Maybe. Or somewhere with real jazz clubs and crowds that didn't stare. At 35, he carried the easy confidence of a man who'd navigated worse roads than these cracked asphalt veins. His voice carrying a faint South Side lilt that made every instruction sound like an invitation. Hop in, kid, he'd said, clapping a hand on my shoulder that lingered just a beat too long. Sending a jolt through me, I chalked up to nerves. Little did I know it was the first crack in the dam. We started slow, circling the empty high school parking lot under gray skies that threatened more than rain. Marcus talked me through the basics: clutch, gas, mirror checks like he was reciting poetry, his presence filling the car with a scent of clean soap and leather from his jacket. I fumbled the pedals, stalling twice before we even hit the perimeter road, my cheeks burning as I muttered apologies. Hey, no sweat, he'd laugh, that deep rumble vibrating through the seat. Everyone's a mess at first. It's about trust. Trust the car. Trust the road. Trust yourself. His words hung there, innocent enough, but they burrowed into me, stirring something restless. Something I'd felt in stolen glances at the locker room showers or the way my pulse raced during those mandatory health class videos on normal attractions. By the end of that first hour, as we idled back at the DMV lot, the rain had started in earnest, drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. I wiped my palms on my jeans, avoiding his gaze in the rearview. You're a natural, Christian, he said, turning to face me fully, his knee brushing mine in the tight space. Just gotta loosen up those shoulders. Life's too short for white-knuckling everything. I nodded, throat dry, and when our eyes locked, there was a flicker, something raw and unspoken that made the air thicken. I bolted out with a mumbled thanks, splashing through puddles to my bike chain nearby, heart pounding as if I'd run a marathon. That night, lying in the dark of my room with posters of indie bands peeling from the walls, I replayed it all, the brush of fabric, the warmth of his voice, the way my body betrayed me with a flush I couldn't name. Was it just the adrenaline? Or was this the pull I'd read about in dog-eared library books, hidden under my mattress like contraband? The next lesson came 2 days later, under a sun that finally broke through, turning the fields golden as we ventured onto the county roads. Mom had packed me a sandwich, fuel for focus. She'd winked, but it sat uneaten on the dash as Marcus pushed me harder, his instructions sharpening with that effortless authority. Eyes up. Scan the horizon, he'd say, his hand hovering near the wheel as if ready to guide. Never quite touching, but close enough to make my skin prickle. We talked, halting at first about school, how I'd bombed calculus but aced English lit, about his move to Elmwood 5 years back after a fresh start from the city. He didn't elaborate, but the shadow in his voice hinted at scars, ones that mirrored the faint ones I carried from whispers in the halls. From the time Tommy Reynolds called me Fairy after catching me staring too long at the quarterback. As miles blurred by, the conversation deepened, weaving through the hum of tires on blacktop. Marcus shared stories of his sister back in Chicago, how she'd fought for her nursing degree against a family that wanted her married off young, how driving had been his escape as a teen, stealing his uncle's keys to chase sunsets over Lake Michigan. Roads don't judge, he said, glancing sideways with a half-smile that crinkled his eyes. They just take you where you're brave enough to go. I swallowed hard, fingers tightening on the wheel, wondering if he could hear the thunder in my chest. That bravery felt miles away, buried under layers of small-town expectations, Dad's gruff, man-up lectures, the church youth group's sermons on purity, the fear that admitting this ache would shatter the fragile normalcy I'd built. We hit a snag on the third Lessona pickup truck barreling from a side road, horn blaring as I hesitated at the yield. The car lurched, my foot slamming the brake too late. And for a heartbeat, time froze, horns wailing, Marcus's hand shooting out to steady the wheel over mine, his grip firm and unyielding. "I've got you," he murmured, voice calm as steel. And in that chaos, his touch anchored me, sending sparks up my arm that had nothing to do with fear. We pulled over, hearts racing in tandem, and he didn't let go right away, his thumb tracing a subtle circle on my skin before he pulled back, clearing his throat. "Close one. You okay?" I nodded, breathless, the imprint of his hand burning like a brand. "Yeah. Thanks to you." Our eyes met again, longer this time, and in that suspended moment, I saw it mirror the hunger, the hesitation, the quiet storm of wanting what the world warned against. The weeks blurred into a rhythm of stolen hours behind the wheel, each lesson peeling back another layer of the boy I thought I was, revealing the man desperate to emerge. Elmwood's seasons shifted subtly, leaves turning crimson, air crisping with the promise of fall, and so did we. Marcus and I, dancing on the edge of something electric, unspoken. I'd arrive early now, heart skittering as his sedan crunched gravel in our driveway. Mom waving from the porch with her thermos of coffee, oblivious to the way my gaze lingered on the slope of his shoulders or the easy grace of his step. "Progress?" she'd ask later, and I'd mumble about merges and yields, omitting the real acceleration, the brush of his knee against mine on turns, the laughter that spilled freer each time. The nights I'd lie awake, tracing phantom paths where his fingers had grazed. One crisp Tuesday, we escaped the suburbs for the winding backroads toward Mill Creek, where the river twisted like veins through hardwood forests. Marcus had suggested it, time to build confidence on curves. He'd said over the phone. His voice warmed through the static line, but I sensed the undercurrent. The excuse to stretch the hour. To let the world shrink to just us and the road. The radio hummed low. Some old soul tune about longing hearts. And as I navigated the first hairpin, he leaned in closer. Breath ghosting my ear. Smooth. Just like that. Feel the pull, lean into it. His words were for the drive. But they landed deeper. Stirring heat low in my belly that I shifted uncomfortably to hide. We stopped at an overlook. Engine ticking cool as we stared out at the valley below. Fog curling like secrets from the water. Marcus pulled a thermos from the back, black coffee. Strong and bitter, and passed it over. Our fingers tangling briefly in the exchange. Tell me something real. Christian, he said, settling against the door, legs stretched in the confined space. What's got you so wound up lately? It's more than just the wheel. The question hung. Vulnerable. And I hesitated, staring at the steam rising between us. How to confess the dreams that woke me sweating. Visions of his hands not on the gear, but on me. Mapping territories I'd only explored in shame-filled solitude. Instead, I started small, the isolation of senior year. The way friends paired off while I watched from the sidelines. The gnawing doubt that I was broken for craving touches that looked like his. He listened without interrupting, nodding as if he'd walked those shadowed paths himself. When I trailed off, voice cracking on the edge of admission, I don't know who I'm supposed to be, he reached across. Hand covering mine on the console. Deliberate this time. No pretense of accident. None of us do. Not at first. But you're not alone in the wondering. His thumb stroked slow. A rhythm that matched my pulse. And I didn't pull away. Couldn't. As the dam cracked wider. The kiss that followed was inevitable. Tentative at first, lips brushing like tires testing wet pavement, then deepening with the urgency of held breaths released. His hand cupped my jaw. Calluses rough against my smoothness. And I melted into it. Tasting coffee and courage. The world outside fading to irrelevance. But freedom's price is steep. And reality intruded like headlights in the rear view. As we broke apart, flushed and dazed, a truck rumbled past below, its driver glancing up curiously. Marcus tensed, withdrawing with a soft curse, eyes scanning the empty road. We can't. Not like this. Not here. The words stung, laced with regret rather than rejection. But they echoed the fears I'd buried, the town that whispered about that new teacher last year. The uncle who disowned his own son for less. We drove back in charged silence. His hand finding mine once at a stop sign. Squeezing before letting go. A promise or a plea, I couldn't tell which. That night, the house felt smaller. Walls closing in as Dad flipped channels on the TV. Griping about union talks at the plant. I showered hot and long, scrubbing at skin that still hummed from Marcus's touch. But the water couldn't wash away the thrill or the terror. Sleep came fitful, dreams weaving roads that led nowhere and everywhere. Always ending with his face, shadowed and calling. By morning, resolve hardened, I craved more. Damn the risks. But the path ahead twisted sharper than any curve we'd conquered. nightfall deepened, painting Elmwood in fiery hues that mirrored the blaze igniting within me. Each driving lesson now a clandestine rendezvous disguised as routine. Marcus and I navigated more than roads. We charted the fragile terrain of desire. Stolen moments stacking like mile markers toward an unknown horizon. I'd catch myself daydreaming in history class. Mr. Hargrove droning about the civil rights marches while I traced invisible lines on my notebook. Marcus's fingers. His lips. The way his laugh rumbled like thunder over open fields. Friends noticed my distraction. Jake ribbing me at lunch about puppy love over some girl from the debate club. But I deflected with jokes. The lie bitter on my tongue. How could I explain this pull? This gravity toward a man twice my age. In a town where love was scripted as boy meets girl under stadium lights. Our fourth lesson veered off script entirely. Marcus picked me up at dusk. The sky bruising purple as we headed not to the practice routes, but to an abandoned quarry on the outskirts. Gravel crunching under tires like whispered confessions. Off-road basics, he claimed. But the glint in his eye betrayed the ruse. And I followed willingly. Heart hammering as we parked amid overgrown weeds. The engine's hush amplifying our breaths. We talked first. Sprawled on the hood under emerging stars about his ex. A fleeting thing in Chicago that ended in heartbreak and relocation. About my parents' quiet endurance. Dad's war stories from Vietnam tucked away like old maps. Vulnerability bridged us. His hand finding mine in the dark. Pulling me close until kisses turned fervent. Bodies pressing with a hunger that scared and exhilarated. Yet paradise fractures easy. As hands roamed his under my shirt. Mine fumbling at his belt, a distant engine growled. Headlights sweeping the tree-line like accusatory beams. We scrambled apart. Hearts slamming. Zipping and buttoning in frantic silence as a ranger's truck idled nearby. Flashlight probing shadows. Just kids joyriding. Marcus muttered when the officer approached. His arm slung casual around my shoulders. Playing the big brother role to perfection. The ranger bought it. Grumbling about trespassing before driving off. But the scare lingered. A chill seeping into our bones as we headed home. We gotta be smarter, he said. Voice tight. Fingers drumming the wheel. This town's got eyes everywhere. I nodded. Throat constricted. But the fear only sharpened the ache. Making every glance. Every graze. A defiant spark. At school. The facade cracked further. Whispers circled about a fudge packer sighting at the quarry vague enough to dismiss. Pointed enough to twist my gut. Jake cornered me after gym. Sweat slick and probing. Heard you been hanging with that driver guy. What's his deal? You turning tail, or what? The slur landed like a punch. Casual cruelty from a friend I'd once trusted. And I shoved past. Locker slamming behind me as rage boiled over. That afternoon, alone in my room, tears came hot and unbidden it just for the words. But for the truth they grazed. The isolation closing like fog. I texted Marcus on the burner phone he'd slipped me, need you, and he came that night. Parking down the block. Slipping through the backyard like a shadow. We met in the old shed behind the garage. Tools and tarps a makeshift veil. His embrace fierce as we clung. Kisses bruising with unspoken pleas. You're worth the risk. He whispered against my neck. Hands steadying my tremors. And for the first time, I believed it. Bodies entwining slow and reverent. Discovering rhythms that felt like home. Don found us tangled in sleeping bags. His heartbeat a lullaby against my ear. But reality intruded with Dad's truck rumbling to life, forcing a hurried goodbye through the window, his kiss lingering like a talisman. The duality wore thin, joy laced with dread, as lessons resumed under watchful skies. Marcus grew quieter, maps of worry etching his brow. Yet his touch never wavered, a thumb along my jaw during a red light, a whispered beautiful in the mirror's reflection. I pushed boundaries too, brushing his thigh on purpose, earning smiles that lit the dash like high beams. But Elmwood's undercurrents stirred. Mom mentioned offhand how folks are talking about the new rec center. Coach Marcus moonlighted there, and her eyes held questions she didn't voice. The tension coiled, a spring ready to snap, and I wondered how long we could outrun the storm brewing on our horizon. Winter crept in stealthy, frosting Elmwood's edges with ice that mirrored the fragility of our secret, turning every drive into a gamble on slick roads and slippery truths. Snow dusted the windshield as Marcus and I ventured further afield, lessons morphing into escapes, picnics in his truck at remote farms, hands linked under blankets while wind howled outside. The romance bloomed fierce and tender, his stories weaving tapestries of resilience, coming out at 22 to a family that fractured but eventually mended, finding solace in community centers and quiet allies. Love isn't a straight line, he'd say, tracing patterns on my palm. It's the detours that make it real. I soaked it in, sharing my own fragments, the poetry I scribbled in margins about boys who looked like him, the prayers I'd whispered as a kid begging God to fix the stirrings church camp ignited. But secrets fester in small towns, roots tangling underground until they surface sharp. It started with a note slipped into my locker, "Fairy boy and his coach, watch your backs," and signed. But the scrawl matched Tommy's, that old bully's venom undiluted by graduation. Fear not anew, shadows lengthening at night, yet it fueled a reckless fire. During our next lesson, rain lashing the windows like judgment, I pulled over unprompted on a deserted stretch, turning to him with eyes blazing. "I don't care who knows," I lied, voice fierce, and kissed him hard, claiming the space between us. Marcus responded with equal fervor, pulling me across the console into a tangle of limbs and longing, the car rocking gently as passion overtook caution. Afterward, sated and spent, we lay entwined, his fingers combing my hair as reality seeped back. "You're brave, Chris, but bravery without smarts gets you wrecked." His words carried weight, hinting at histories I hadn't pried into. And that night, over hurried takeout in his cramped apartment above the DMV office, first time there, the space smelling of books and incense opened the floodgates. Photos on the mantel showed a younger Marcus, arm around a man with laughing eyes. The story spilled halting betrayal, a partner's infidelity exposed in a tabloid whisper, the fallout that chased him to Ohio's anonymity. I swore off complications, he admitted, vulnerability cracking his armor. "Until you make me want to build again." Tears pricked my eyes, not from pity but recognition, the shared ache of loving against odds, and we made love slow that night. Bodies a vow, whispers promising tomorrows. School amplified the strain. Jake's jabs escalated to shoves in the hall, rumors swirling like blizzards, Christians banging the instructor, total queer move. I fought back once, fist connecting with his jaw in the parking lot. Detention and a split knuckle my badges. Mom confronted me gently over dinner, Her hand on mine. Trouble at school. Honey, you can tell me anything. The offer hung. Maternal warmth clashing with my terror of shattering her world. Dad's homophobic rants from barstools echoing in memory. I deflected with half-truths about bullies and stress. But guilt coiled tighter, poisoning the joy Marcus and I stole in moonlit drives. The breaking point loomed mid-December. A freak ice storm blanketing roads and glass. Marcus canceled lessons, too dangerous, but I biked through flurries to his place anyway. Desperation driving me. He pulled me inside, concern etching his face. And we argued for the first time, me accusing him of pulling away. Him pleading caution for us both. This isn't just puppy lovey, it's real. And it'll destroy us if we're careless. Words escalated. Hurts unearthed the age gap, he fretted over. My impulsiveness he feared until exhaustion won. Collapsing into apologies and embraces. Reaffirming our bond in the quiet aftermath. As storm raged outside, we planned my test in January. His contract ending soon. A road trip south come spring. Away from prying eyes. Hope flickered. Fragile as first snow. But it warmed the chill, binding us closer. Yet fate, cruel navigator, had other turns. New Year's Eve brought whispers of a town hall meeting budget cuts threatening the DMV. Marcus's job among casualties in with it. Eyes turning sharper our way. I felt the noose tightening. Every glance a potential snare. But in his arms, resolve hardened, we'd steer through. Together. Toward a dawn where love wasn't a detour, but the destination. January thawed Elmwood's grip just enough for roads to clear. But the chill lingered in hearts and headlines. Rumors crystallizing into pointed stares as Marcus and I circled closer to collision. My driving test loomed like a checkpoint. Parallel lines to our parallel lives, mine teetering on adulthood's edge. His shadowed by whispers of inappropriate conduct, filtering through the rec center grapevine. We met in fragments now, quick coffees at the edge of town diner, where his foot hooked mine under the booth. Hurried nights in his truck. Fogged windows veiling our fervor. Each encounter deepened the imprint. His touch a language of reassurance, fingers spelling stay strong on my thigh during tense drives. Lips murmuring affirmations that drowned out the town's static. The test day arrived under steel skies. Mom's station wagon idling curbside as Marcus prepped me in the ed car. His calm a lifeline amid my nausea. You've got the size forward. Heart steady, he said, hand squeezing mine over the key. A ritual now heavy with subtext. The examiner. A grizzled vet named Harlan with a mustache like frozen tundra. Grunted approvals as I merged onto Main Street. But midway through, disaster skidded in, black ice on the bridge. Tires hydroplaning toward guardrail. Instinct scream brake. Steer into it, and Marcus's voice echoed phantom in my ear. Trust the pull. I corrected. Heart lurching. The car settling with inches to spare. Harlan's nod was grudging, lucky kid, but as we pulled in, license in hand, elation surged. Marcus waiting in the lot with a grin that split the clouds. We celebrated covertly, ditching the sedan for his pickup, heading to a frozen pond where kids once skated, now deserted under fresh powder. He packed a thermos of hot cocoa laced with whiskey for the victor, and we bundled on a plaid blanket, breaths mingling in frosty plumes. Laughter flowed easy at first, toasting freedoms new and old. But gravity pulled deeper. I confessed the note's aftermath. The isolation carving hollows in my chest. He revealed a letter from his sister, urging return to Chicago, a job offer dangling like escape. What if we went together? I ventured, voice small against the wind, and his silence stretched, eyes tracing constellations in the ice. You're young. Chris world's full of firsts. I don't want to clip your wings. The words wounded, laced with love's selflessness, and I kissed him fierce to silence doubts. Bodies warming the cold till stars wheeled overhead. Back home, triumph soured swift. Dad clapped my back at dinner, man's gotta drive straight, his pride unwitting irony. While Mom's hug lingered, her whisper probing, seeing someone special. Panic flared, deflection tumbling out about just friends. But her eyes held knowing. A bridge half built. School offered no respite. Tommy's crew escalated. Graffiti scrawled on my locker, drive-by queer, and Jake's betrayal peaked in a cafeteria confrontation. His voice low venom. Knew you were off, hope he dumps your ass. I swung wild, knuckles splitting again. But this time suspension followed. 2 weeks of house arrest amplifying the cage. Marcus visited under pretense of post-test review, slipping in through the back while parents worked. Our time fractured by clocks. We made love with urgency. Every caress a rebellion. But afterward, lying sweat damp in my childhood bedposters mocking my Stasi, she voiced the fracture. This town's poisoning us. I turned and noticed next week maybe it's time. Hope warred with terror. Chicago glittered distant. A city of rainbow flags and open streets. But leaving meant ripping roots, Mom's weary smiles. Dad's gruff silences. The boy I'd been. Then we go? I whispered, tracing his jaw, but not without fighting for here first. The fight ignited unexpectedly, a school assembly on tolerance. Guest speaker a local activist whose words on hidden love struck too close. Applause thundering as I sat rigid. Marcus's text buzzing, proud of you. Wherever you stand. Emboldened, I cornered the counselor post-talk. Words spilling, halting. Gay. And scared. Her nod was steady. Resources pressed into my hand hotlines. Group's first allies in the open. That vulnerability cascaded. I told Mom over chamomile tea that night. Tears streaming as her arms enveloped. My boy always loved. No matter. Dad took longer. A stunned silence over beers in the garage exploding into questions, that instructor. Jesus. Chris, but ending in a rough hug. Won't lose you to this shit. Catharsis flooded. Chains loosening. And I raced to Marcus, bursting into his apartment with news that shattered reservations. We planned feverishly, my gap year at community college. His Chicago ties pulling us north. A future sketched in tentative stroke shared apartment. Open dates. Lives intertwined. Yet Elmwood exacted toll. Tommy's final jab came via anonymous call to the DMV. Allegations flying wild. Forcing Marcus into hearings. His job hanging by ethics threads. Through it, our bond fortified. Nightly calls weaving resolve. His voice anchor in storms. As February's end neared. Test passed and truths aired. We stood on precipice ready to accelerate into unknown. Hands linked. Steering toward light. Spring unfurled tentative in Elmwood. Buds piercing frost-hard soil as Marcus and I bloomed amid thorns. Our romance no longer shadowed whisper, but defiant bloom. The DMV probe dragged. Depositions dredging old Chicago ghosts. But community rallied subtle mom's diner co-workers vouching character. The counselor's letter praising mentorship churning tides slow. We seized breaths between, drives now open. Windows down to wind-whipped confessions. Picnics where kisses bloomed unhurried under apple blossoms. Intimacy evolved too. From frantic to profound nights at his place mapping bodies like cherished maps. Laughter mingling with moans. Vulnerabilities shared in afterglow, my fears of inadequacy. His of repeating past fractures. Yet adversity sharpened edges. Tommy's vendetta peaked viciosa, slashed tire on Marcus's truck. Spray paint slurs on the rec center door prompting police logs and town murmurs that swung from sympathy to suspicion. Jake, remorse gnawing, approached halting in the school lot, heard the shitsery. Man. Didn't get it. Forgiveness tasted ash. But I extended olive branch shaky, just stop the hate, planting seeds in barren ground. Home front steadied. Dad's barbs softened to questions over engine rebuilds, so. This Marcus treats you right. His awkward allyship a bridge rebuilt plank by plank. Mom baked pies for our guest. Her winks conspiratorial. Weaving him into family fabric gentle. Marcus's resolve wavered under strain. Nights pacing his kitchen as I soothed with touches and truths were stronger than their smallness. The hearing climaxed mid-March. Sterile room thick with tension accusers absent. Testimonies stacking in our favor. Harlan, the examiner, gruffly attesting. Kid's a damn fine driverman's a pro. Verdict cleared him. Contract renewed tentative. But the scare scarred. Prompting deeper talks, Chicago's pull versus Elmwood's roots. My college deferral for a year of exploring us. We compromised summers north. Roots here crafting hybrid horizon that honored both. Catalysts accelerated, a pride event in neighboring Dayton. Our first outing hand-in-hand among rainbows and cheers. Marcus's arms solid anchor as confetti swirled. My heart soaring free. Back home. I volunteered at the rec center. Co-coaching youth soccer under his watchful eye. Kids' laughter balm to old wounds. Romance romanticized two impromptu dances in his living room to Motown vinyls. Slow grinds that dissolved into passion. Stargazing drives where futures sketched verbal, adoptions maybe. Travels to coasts where love wore lays. Yet doubt lingered subtle. My youth's impatience clashing his caution's wisdom. Arguments flaring over logistics, your rushing destiny. He'd chide. While I countered. Or claiming it. April's rains washed renewal. But storm clouds gathered personal, a letter from his ex. Olive branch laced with old flames. Testing trust's fragile. Jealousy spiked sharp. Accusations flying in heated exchange, am I just rebound? Ending in tears and reaffirmations. His vows etched in skin, you're the road I choose. Every mile. Healing deepened intimacy. Explorations tender venturing boundaries. Mutual discoveries forging unbreakable alloy. School wound down. Capping gown fittings mocking past fears. Now laced with pride valedictorian, nod tentative. Speech drafted on resilience's curves. As May bloomed riotous. We crested hill, my license framed on mom's mantle. Marcus's promotion to head instructor sealed with handshakes and hugs. Town's gaze softened. Tommy's family relocating quiet karma's whisper and Jake's invite to grad party. Awkward amends sealed over punch bowls. In quiet moments. Marcus and I reflected, from that first touch to this tapestry. Love's drive had veered us through wrecks and wonders. Emerging scarred but whole. One hand changed everything. I murmured one dawn, fingers laced in his. And he smiled, eyes horizon-bound, and led us home. Summer scorched Elmwood gold. Days stretching lazy as Marcus and I wove deeper into commitment's weave. Post-grad freedom a canvas for strokes bold. I worked shifts at the gas station pumping fuel for folks who now nodded knowing. Slurs silenced by time's tide while evenings belonged to us. Barbecues in his backyard. Smoke curling scents of ribs and revelation. Dad even joining once. Beers clinking tentative toasts. Nights blurred boundaries. Bodies schooled in symphony as strength yielding to my curiosity. Whispers of forever murmured in sweat-slick sheets. We traveled short hauls, Cleveland's Rock Hall. Hands clasped anonymous in crowds. Lakeside cabins where swimsuits shed to moonlight dips. Laughter echoing off waters that mirrored our fluidity. Challenges persisted. Insidious as humidity. Marcus's sister visited. Sharp-eyed assessment over dinners appraising this white boy who'd captured her brother's heart barbs traded light but probing. Easing to approval when I shared poetry penned for him. Verses raw on love's detours. My own doubts surfaced in idle hours, whispers of too young from mirrors. Fears I'd tether him unfairly. But his reassurances anchored, age is just mileage. Soul's the engine. Community rippled too. A local paper profile on youth mentors featured us oblique. Photos capturing glances laden. Sparking emails of support and shade-hate mail crumpled. Allies amplified. Adventure called louder, our Chicago jaunt. Train rumbling north through cornfields to skyline sprawl. His hand mined through tunnels that echoed heartbeats. The city embraced pride flags fluttering eternal. Boys Town bars pulsing with beats that matched our rhythm. First dance floor sway under disco lights. Bodies pressed unashamed. His old haunts revisited, jazz club where he'd proposed once. Now vows renewed casual over sax solos. Family dinner where sister hugged fierce. Welcome. Troublemaker. I thrived. Yet homesick tugged Elmwood's simplicity a counterpoint. Lessons learned in both worlds embrace. Back south. Tensions simmered domestic, shared lease discussions. My thrift store finds clashing his minimalist lean. Arguments over decor dissolving to make up sex on half-assembled furniture. Deeper rifts tested, a work trip for him to Detroit. Nights alone amplifying insecurities. Phantom calls from ex stirring paranoia till trust rebuilt over airport reunions. Kisses apologies. I channeled energy creative starting a blog anonymous on queer youth in Rust Belt towns. Entries veiled but vivid. Drawing messages that mirrored my path. Fostering quiet revolution. August crested crisis subtle. Dad's health scary as slipped disc from factory lift. Hospital vigils where Marcus stood sentinel. Fetching coffees and holding my hand discreet in waiting rooms. Gratitude forged bonds tighter. Dad's gruff, good man. That 1 inch a milestone. Mom's tears over shared burdens a seal. As leaves hinted turn. We hosted first, us, party friends old and new. Jake toasting awkward. Rainbow cake slicing symbols. Laughter filled spaces once silent. Toasts to roads traversed. Futures paved. Reflection deepened in harvest's hush, from trembling wheel to steady hand in his. I'd steered through fog of self to clarity's dawn. Marcus. Mirror and muse. Taught navigation not just of cars, but soul's bravery in bends. Grace and glides. Love. We'd learned. Wasn't straight shot, but scenic route. Detours enriching destination. As equinox neared, plans solidified, my fall enrollment local. His weekends north, bridging worlds. Anniversaries marked by that first touch's echo. In his arms one amber evening. Porch swing creaking. I whispered. Forgot how to steer once, now I know the way. His reply. Lips to temple, with you. Every path feels right. Autumn gilded elmwoods decay into beauty. Leaves carpeting roads like confetti from seasons past. As Marcus and I settled into rhythm sustainable. Love's engine purring steady. College commenced chaotic syllabi stacks, and lecture halls echoing isolation anew, but his texts mid-class. Thinking of your smile. Grounded me. Study dates at his place, blending notes with necking. Ambitions intertwined. We volunteered tandem, LGBTQ plus alliance at campus. Panels where I shared halting. His steady presence amplifying voices. Turning personal scars to communal shields. Town evolved parallel. Pride sticker on the diner's window. Moms, all welcome, sign a quiet revolution. Intimacies innovated gentle, role reversals playful. Him yielding control in bedroom games that built trust's architecture. Travels expanded fall foliage drives to Hocking Hills. Hikes hand in hand cresting views that stole breaths. Metaphors for our ascent. Conflicts cropped minor. Holiday planning wars as Chicago kin versus my Elmwood roots resolved in compromise feasts. Tables groaning unity. Deeper dives surfaced, therapy sessions joint. Unpacking baggage his abandonment echoes. My internalized shame emerging lighter. Linked. Winter's whisper brought benchmarks, 1-year mark since that faded touch. Celebrated lakeside bonfire. Flames dancing reflections of growth. He gifted leather jacket. Worn soft as promises. A custom dash plaque engraved our road. Mounted in the old Chevy now mine. Passion peaked, poetic slow mornings tangled. Explorations venturing toys and talks. Boundaries blurred consensual. Deepening devotion. Spring's renewal mirrored inner. My blog bloomed book deal tentative. Essays compiled on hidden loves in Heartland. Marcus's forward penning pride. Challenges crested external conservative council pushback on rec center programs. Protests we led serene. Signs waving love all lanes. Media spotlight casting us icons reluctant. Through fray. Solidarity surged, Jake's apology formal. Volunteering beside. Tommy's distant reform letter. Redemption's arc. Summer solstice sealed visions, proposal subtle. Not ring, but road atlas marked routes worldwide our adventures begin. I ascended tearful. Yes. Forever navigator. Wedding whispers wove small. Inclusive. Ohio chapel with rainbow aisle. As cycles turned. From novice driver to life co-pilot. Christian reflected, that hand's brush hadn't derailed but redirected. Toward authenticity's highway. Marcus. Eternal passenger. Echoed in quiet, you taught me to trust the journey too. In Elmwood's enduring embrace. We drove oncuses at stops. Hands eternal on gear proving love's ultimate lesson, no straight path. But with heart's compass. Every mile meaningful. Every turn toward home.